count us down.
There we go.
Now, he's plied me with drumsticks because my husband, who died 5 years ago, was Roger Clark, drummer, that played quite a bit of music with these two I'm up here with today.
Yes, you did.
And we're going to find out some of their deep, dark secrets.
No, you're not.
Mid-level secrets, perhaps.
Well, mid-afternoon.
Yeah, okay. Well, just some good info. But I work for Big River Broadcasting, which was founded by Sam Phillips with Sun Records. And his family still owns it. I'm proud to be there. And I'm proud to be here, I'll tell you. Today would have been my husband's birthday, and it would have been our wedding anniversary. He didn't want 2 dates to remember, so he married me on his birthday. Well, when we walk around the Shoals area, we are walking around giants that most of us don't even realize are there. Musical legends, and these are two, Clayton, Ivey, Bob, Wray. Thank you for letting me be a part of this today. Let's start at the start. Where did you migrate to the Shoals from, Bob?
I migrated from Wisconsin, central Wisconsin. I was on the road with Travis Womack, and he was touring up there, so I got to meet him, jammed with him. Then a year later, in '68, his bass player quit 2 weeks before his tour. So he called me up, wanted to know if I would tour, and I toured with Travis for '68. Which at the time, he was starting to come down here and do some sessions with Rick, because we were based out of Memphis. And then I quit him in the end of '68. Travis ended up moving here in '69. The Swampers left. They brought in another rhythm section. They played on a few tracks, Fancy and Little Richard. Then Little Richard talked that rhythm section, or the bass and drummer, into going on the road with him, so it opened up the bass slot, and Travis called me and wanted to know if I was interested in doing sessions, which I had not done many sessions at all, except with him in Memphis. One of the most memorable was one of my early sessions was with Ace Cannon, the sax player, and it was at High Studios, and Ace walked in on a Saturday morning with a tall boy Bud, a loaded 45, and a bottle of pills, and set him on the piano and said, "Let's cut." That was my introduction to studio. So Travis got me down here in '70, and I auditioned for Rick, and there's a gentleman in here walking around with an album. It was the first album I did, actually, with Mickey Buckins, Bobby Hatfield's album. And that was my first audition at Fame. Then I did Willie Hightower with Rick. And then the Osmonds came in, so that's how I ended up here. I've been basically in and out of here for 53 years.
Well, now, Clayton, same question to you, but I do know you're from my favorite spot on earth, Pensacola.
That's your favorite spot?
Oh, yes. Pensacola Beach, I could believe it.
Sorry. Clayton. Really.
Damn. Go ahead.
How did you get from Pensacola to Muscle Shoals?
This is really fun. This is weird. I was working in this club. Travis and I both worked in this club, the Bandbox in Pensacola. And we was playing one night, and this guy named Don Schroeder had come up here and cut "I'm Your Puppet" on James and Bobby Purify. And Rick engineered it, but this guy, Don was the producer. He claimed he was anyway. And he walks up to the organ and says, "You gonna put on the record tomorrow night?" I says, "Yeah, where?" He says, "Muscle Shoals, Alabama. We'll be there at 6. I said, "Where in the hell is Muscle Shoals?" And I got my map. I went and got me a map. And it was at the other end of Alabama. So, next night at 6 o'clock, I showed up. We were going to do James and Bobby Purify. Problem is, James and Bobby Purify didn't show up.
No!
So we cut a record on Don instead. And I went back home. And a couple years later, when the Swampers bought the place across in Sheffield, as a matter of fact, I want to thank him to his face. Where's Ronnie Eads? I think Ronnie Eads was responsible. I think he's the one that told Rick that I played keyboards. I do believe that. That is true. Is that not right, Ronnie?
Yeah.
See, I didn't lie. So, anyway, Rick calls me, and I'm at my ex-mother-in-law's house in Funiac Springs, Florida. And how he got that number, nobody knows. Anyway, he calls me and says, I need you to come up here, and you got a bass player. I said, yeah, I got a bass player. It was Jesse Boyce, and we came up, and when I got here, there was a drummer and horn section, everybody. There's a whole rhythm section. And it came out to be Fame Gang. I got some fellow members here. Ronnie, Mickey Bucket, and Travis Womack, fellow Fame Gang members. And y'all can stand up if you want.
They can't.
No, we can't hardly stand up.
Well,
You're right. And anyway, we get up here and we cut a few seconds. I can't remember. I think it was a few of us on the beginning. We wasn't a studio band yet. You know what I'm saying? We were just a bunch of guys thrown together, but we could play. And let's see what it was. And some of the first guys would come was Spencer Wiggins and James Govan and all those guys. And then one day Clarence comes in and Rick comes in, we cut Patches. And of course Patches was a monster record. You know. And where's we at?
Pensacola? No.
No.
That was like,
How I got here.
yes.
That's how I got here. And loved it. Couldn't wait to get to the studio every morning.
Well, now, did you two have specific studios where you played sessions, or did you float back and forth?
No, we just worked at Fame for 2 years. We was under contract with Rick for 2 years. And when that was up, I wanted to freelance. Rick couldn't understand why I wanted to freelance. I said, look, I just want to freelance. And I was up in his office. He said, well, I'll double whatever you make. I said, no, that's not the problem. The problem is I want to freelance. And Wes Farrell, who owned Chelsea Records, was in the office. And he looks at Rick and he says, Rick, he said, don't you know when a man don't want to work for you? and ever since then, Rick and I were great friends.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of sessions for him.
What about you, Bob? Were you exclusive to Fame as well?
I was when I first moved here and became part of the Fame Gang. Didn't play on that Fame Gang album, but we were tied down with Rick, although we did sneak out on Saturdays and do sessions at other studios.
Hey, Rodney's over here.
Yeah, and there were a lot of studios. There's Widget and Muscle Sound, Broadway, Fame,
Music
places to go. So,
Yeah.
so we'd get out and work. And then once the Capitol, I think, is the one that had the salaries or had us under contract with Rick, and they said
Right.
Fame Records was part of Capitol, and so we were on a salary every week. Then we were doing sessions, and then once that kind of dissolved, then we were able to go out and freelance. And so just like Clayton, I just started working everywhere.
And Clayton, you freelanced all the way into a brand new studio, Wishbone.
I damn sure did. Freelanced out of it.
Seems like a good idea.
I found that big.
I see a young man back here that knows all about those Wishbone days, Kevin Lamb.
Yes, he does. Yeah, I did. And but prior to that, I worked with Swampers for 3, 4, 5 years over there with them. And Terry Woodford, my partner, was in the basement over there. He ran the publishing company and asked me one day to start a production company. I said, yeah, let's 27 dumber than hell. And I said, yeah, man, let's do it. So we go and we do that, and we decided, and then we went to had this deal with Motown, this production deal, the two of us.
Yeah, I wanted you to tell us about that.
Well,
Roger.
we cut this, yeah, right. Roger was on the record. And we cut this record. It was written by Alex Harvey, called Rings. And cut it on a guy from New Orleans. And Barry Gordy just loved this record. I don't know why he loved it, but he did. And he told Suzanne DePass, who was running production side of Motown at the time, he said, just buy them. And he bought those. The only thing he didn't get was half the pub. He didn't get all the publishing. He didn't get it. He had to split the publishing with us. But we were there 2.5 years. Got to work with most of the acts. And
Now that's a traditionally black music label,
oh,
so
absolutely,
you and the guys from
We
Muscle
were-
Shoals
yeah, we
probably stood
were from
out.
Alabama, working for a black label. Yeah. But I will say this: they had all the great artists. They just did, and it was a great experience. But I'm glad we had to buy our way out
Oh, wow.
because we wanted out.
The first time I was in Wishbone Studio was when Hot was there,
Oh yeah,
recording Angel in Your Arms.
yeah.
Bob, you're on that, aren't you? And Clayton, you wrote the song.
Myself and Terry and well, Tommy Brassfield had the title. And normally when there's three of you and one of them has the title, he gets the third too. So.
Oh, okay.
And, but yeah, it was a big record.
Something Bob and I were talking about just yesterday. I don't know if you realize this or not, but there is no Muscle Shoals sound. It's fluid. It can match anything. You can go from R&B to country to pop to it's a fluid
It's just
concept.
music.
Yeah.
To me, I kind of question when people say, I love the Muscle Shoals sound. It's like, what is it? Because if you look at the history of Muscle Shoals back from, I mean, I've been here for 53 years. You had the Osmonds, you had Mac Davis, Baby Don't Get Hooked on Me, Mary McGregor was at the, Paul Anka, Hank Jr., and all basically different rhythm sections and different studios, all within 5 miles of each other. So can you actually sit and put your finger on, say that record was cut in Muscle Shoals? I find it real difficult because I mean, we cut some stuff at Wishbone that was totally off, we were just listening to it earlier, totally off what normal stuff was. Some of the early R&B, yes, but for people to identify it as the Muscle Shoals sound, I still question what is that, because there's so many rhythm sections that have come out of here, and you can take a rhythm section, the chemistry of that band, and really literally put them in a studio and cut a hit record.
Yeah.
I believe, Rick had the advantage because he owned his own studio, but you get the right rhythm section together and cut a song and take it across town and cut it, it's gonna be totally different. Just because of the chemistry of the players. You got a question, sir?
I had a horn player from Memphis, Tennessee that sung it pretty good. I asked him, I said, what is the difference between the Muscle Shoals sound and the Memphis sound? He said, about 150 miles.
That's about right.
Well, when you've got good pickers, you got good pickers. And
The thing that amazes me was when Motown went out of business. That rhythm section that they had played on more hit records than anybody. Anybody.
wow.
All up together, they played on more hit records.
But they had a combination. There's two bass players, 2 or 3 bass players, and 2 or 3 drummers.
Well, yeah.
There's 3 bass players. So you can, if you listen to the Motown records, you can tell Jamerson.
Yeah.
Carol Kay played on some of the stuff. There's a big difference between Jamerson and Carol Kay.
Big difference.
And then Bob Babbitt played on some stuff, and there was a difference between him. But it was all that case was just Motown's, their songs and their producers and all that. But
Just the way it sounded up there. What they
Yeah.
played. They were all bebop players. They were all jazzers, man. They played jazz clubs till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then they'd go to the studio and work. You know what I'm saying? That was just crazy to me. Of course, we did it too.
There was a very unique session at Wishbone with Hank Jr.
Yeah.
that ended up, not only were you musicians on it, family tradition, but you sang on it.
We did. When you guys hear some family tradition on the radio, that's us singing background.
probably was it. It's the only record I ever had the chance to sing on. It was a hit, and they never called me back to sing. So it's a good thing I played bass. I never made it as a vocalist.
Well, I think it's a good thing Roger played drums too, because he said Mac McAnally told him to cut his vocal completely out.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why.
Okay.
But it's still on the record today. He is so out of tune. But they left it on. We left it on there, and but boy, you could hear it on the band.
That's one record that there were a lot of people in this area for years that had no clue that it was cut here. Because it was totally opposite of the type of, I mean, this is an R&B town for the most part until, later on, but that record, that's a great trivia question. Now it's pretty well known, but there were a lot of people that did not know that record was cut here, and it's probably one of the most recognized songs generation-wise that I played on, because everybody, every kid, every college kid, they got all their dirty words and all this stuff for it. You go to frat parties, you're gonna be playing that song all the time.
That's where our daughter learned all the dirty words. She went to UT, and that's all. It's crazy.
Yeah.
She didn't get them from you.
No.
Told you.
So not only Muscle Shoals, but you worked in Nashville. You
yeah.
probably worked all over the country.
I worked in Memphis in the 70s, a lot at Sam Phillips, Onyx, and then I went to, I used to do a lot of work at Scott McClellan up in Chattanooga, on the mountain, and I was in Atlanta until about 76, then came back here. And then I moved to Nashville in 80. And still worked here, but work was so much more plentiful up there.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to leave any names out, but Clayton, you've worked with Roy Orbison, and I'm sure that goes for Bob as well at Wishbone, and John Kay with
Yeah.
Steppenwolf, the Osmonds, Boz Skaggs, Toby Keith, Greg Allman,
Yeah.
an amazing list, and Bob's discography, if we were here until this time tomorrow, I still wouldn't be able to list them all anyway. And due to a sad situation, Bob has ended up playing bass now for Garth Brooks. Mike Chapman had been Garth's bass player from his very first demo through his last hit, and sadly Mike passed away, but Milton Sledge got you in with Garth after that. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a combination of Alan Reynolds produced Garth. He also produced Kathy Mattea, Hal Ketchum. Those are some of the main acts that he did. And I did just about all those tracks, especially Hal Ketchum stuff. And Alan told me one time, he said, I'd love to get you on some Garth stuff, but I said, I wouldn't take it if you booked me. Because I admired Garth for being so loyal to his rhythm section that started out with him from day one on demos. And it was unfortunate that Mike passed away, but that was, and it was an uncomfortable situation, but I was prepared for it, and I had a good talk with Garth when I got there, and I understood some of the guys hadn't seen Garth in a while since Mike died, so it was a very sensitive situation for me. But Garth appreciated it. My daughter got to spend 2 days in the studio with him while we were eating lunch. She's sitting on the couch talking grandkids with Garth, and And so he's a great guy to work with, and it was fun to be on that project. But to see my daughter in the room with just the rhythm section and Garth Brooks, and then a month later I went to his concert with 20,000 people. It's a good concert, but it wasn't the thrill to me to sit and watch my daughter sit there and Garth go, Valerie, come over here, they're eating lunch, let's talk grandkids, and sitting there. And, I mean, you know, people walk around with guitar picks and whatever, and my daughter's got pictures and the whole story. So that was one of the biggest high points for me with Garth.
Valerie is amazing. If you don't know Bob's daughter, she's something else.
Music junkie.
Clayton, tell me about the band Mirage.
Oh,
Strike a
here's
nerve.
this is a true story.
Oh.
Brace yourself.
Where's Donnie? Yeah.
I'm gonna be totally honest. I'm gonna be totally honest. We put that band together. We had a friend, one of our lawyers in LA. Worked for Warner Brothers. And Terry and I needed 10 grand. So he says, cut me a record and send it to me. And that's Mirage. We sent the record and got the money. Simple as that.
Who was in the band?
Myself, Roger. Was you in it, Bob?
Butch Ledford.
Butch Ledford.
But yeah.
Butch Ledford. Thank you.
Wallace?
Jerry Wallace.
Okay.
Who? Kevin? Kevin was in it? Anyway, that's who it did. and it didn't come out or anything.
But it was I've seen the publicity photo
Sure.
of you guys standing
Oh, yeah.
somewhere over on the TVA reservation.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, we had to make it look legit.
And here all along, I thought it was a legitimate record deal.
Like, you know, you were standing in radioactive slag over there.
Yes, I heard that.
That's wonderful.
Explains so much.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, Bob, have you ever played on a session where the artist just decided that clothes were optional?
What?
Yeah.
Clothes were
Oh,
optional.
clothes.
I made a comment the other day on Facebook. Everybody's up in arms with this Jason Aldean, and I haven't kept up with it, to be honest with you, other than some of the comments. But I made a comment on Facebook. I said, I've got a David Allan Coe story that'll make Jason Aldean look elementary. And so the story she's relating to is I did a lot of work with David over the years. I played on The Ride, and Mona Lisa Lost Her Smile. Strange man. No air conditioning in the studio. I'm from the tropics. He said, we don't need that. Okay. So we were cutting CBS A, and Billy Sherrill was producing him, and the control room was full of people, full band, like an 8-piece band, background singers, female background singers. And David comes out, and from here to Michael stands in front of the control room window. The background singers are right behind him, and he's stripped to his boots. And when I say stripped to his boots, I mean stripped. And all he had was, we called it his Mr. T training kit around his neck, because he had these gold chains and all that. And he stood there, and his statement was, Billy Sherrill told me to come out here, he set the mood for the next song. And he just stood there, and he's 10 feet from me. And it was quite gross. So I don't know to this day what mood he set. As far as I know, I think we continued recording, but it was that's probably the grossest moment of my career, was to have a visual of David Allan Coe trying to set the mood for me to play. It wasn't what the manual said, I can tell you that.
Can you top that?
I don't know, but I can get close.
Okay.
When we was doing family tradition, Hank was over here in one of the vocal booths. And I walked in this vocal booth, I wanted to say something about a lion or something. And this is right after he fell off the mountain in Montana. And this side over here was all man-made.
His eyes were like this.
Oh, okay.
Still are.
And he wore a big shade. Of course, he liked to play tricks on me. So I go in his room, and I'm in there, and I look at him, he takes his shades off, and one eye's down here.
Oh, no.
Oh, I'm telling you the truth. I said, Hank? I said, you got to put them damn glasses on. I can't stay in here. Of course, he loved that. That was pretty good.
That's a pretty good rival story.
Well, he was a lucky man, because I'm going to tell you, when he hit the ground, there was a doctor 15 feet from him.
I did not know that.
Kept him from going to the shop.
Well, we were talking before we got started here about George Jones. Bob, you said you missed playing on He Stopped Loving Her Today by a couple of months?
Yeah, I moved to Nashville in April of '80, and they had just cut He Stopped Loving Her Today. And I don't know if I'd have been on it, but I'd finished the album with Billy Sherrill. And that was always when, if I'd have moved a couple months earlier, might have had a shot at playing on that record. But I did finish the album, and I did the next single, and did a lot of work with George after that. But
And you were with him when he quit drinking.
yeah, I did a lot of sessions with Billy Sherrill, and George was a lot of them, but George wasn't there. We'd be book a 2 o'clock session, and at 10 minutes to 2, Billy Sherrill would walk out and go, well, he's coked up in Dallas, he's not coming in, sign the time card, boys, and go home. So we signed the time card. Well, all that comes out of their royalties. So it didn't take him too long to figure out that it was a pretty expensive little, I didn't show up, no-show Jones kind of thing. But then they booked us on George Jones and Merle Haggard album. And I've got a picture that everybody thinks Jones is just wasted, and he isn't. Well, the drinking thing, we'll back up. I did a 10 a.m. session with him at CBS one morning, and George came in with a briefcase and opened it up, and it was perfect rows of Jack Daniels miniatures. And he popped a couple of those to start the 10 a.m. I got done at 1, went over to this market, Virginia's market, to get a sandwich, and walk in, there's all these newspapers and stuff sitting there, and it says, George Jones quits drinking. And I looked at my watch, and I told Virginia, I said, it's got to be within 10 minutes. She said, really? I said, I just got done with a session. Of course, she knew all of us because it was right there on Music Row. But when he did the Merle Haggard thing, he was sober, and I had heard through different channels that he was a little nervous. But he also thought that Haggard was the singer, the country singer. He knew all the lyrics, knew the songs. It was we cut C.C. Waterback and a couple other songs on that album. But yeah, he was straight as an arrow for that one. But to quit drinking, it's like, no, he did not even 10 minutes ago. He did.
Guys, were there any session players over the years that you feel didn't get their due, that they were so good and never really got a lot of acknowledgement?
Yeah, all of us.
I had to ask.
I'll agree with him. I mean, how many times have you heard unsung heroes? Not that it's not, it's just we're a different group of people, you know, and, you know, people think because you play on One Bad Apple sold 5 million? Something like that. Union Scale, which we work off of in 70, was right around $70 for 3 hours. So $20 an hour and some change. And with Rick, we probably did 3 sessions to get One Bad Apple, one song. So you're looking at $210, $220. And Jackson's first check was $93,000 or something like that. Some crazy thing, you know. So
A little bit of discrepancy.
yeah. But you know what, we choose to do this, and There's people that have done 10 times more than I've done. Same ball. I'm like right here. I don't want to be the hot guy, the dude, you know. I'm content. My whole career has been built on versatility, which is just mine, is natural with me. I'm like that with everything outside of music. So I accept whatever, and I'm perfectly content. And I've had a great career, but there's guys that have done 10 times more than I have, and that's fine too. But that doesn't bother me. I'm like, yeah, have at it. We've all been in this same thing as being session players, and some form or fashion, we've all made a decent, comfortable living. Some elevated, some not, but still, we've been playing. I mean, this is all I've done for 53 years, and I'm proud of that, you know. And content. I have a home to show for it. So.
And a lab.
And I got a Labrador. Yeah, I've had 8 Labradors.
I think what Bob's really saying is,
This is gonna be good. He's looking at me.
I think what Bob's really saying is that Bob and myself and the guys I know in here are not ass kissers. Now, if you piss, you can get a lot more work. I've seen it. I've seen that.
Well, one of the reasons I moved back from Nashville in early 2000 was it seemed like it was getting so political that the political musicians, not bass players, everybody, the whole attitude, the political players were getting more calls for work than the people that were actually players. You know, well, my brother's uncle is really a good player, you know, and they book him because he knew somebody or whatever. 9 times out of 10, it didn't pan out quite the way they had planned it. And I just got I'd been playing kind of the same songs for 20-something years, and it was like time to move on. But I don't do that very well at all, so like Clayton said, I just want to play. That's all we really want to do.
You still get the thrills when you pick up that bass.
A rhythm section session to me is like, I mean, it's more like a class reunion now. But to go into a room, I just did Shenandoah's new album with a bunch of session buddies from Nashville, and it's like a class reunion. You go in, and it's everybody, you know, stories and picking on each other, doing the whole work. When times count the song off, it's back to business. You do your 3-minute song or whatever it is, you get the track, and then it's back to having fun. That's what I still enjoy after all these years.
You still enjoy it too, don't you? Like,
Oh, God, yeah. I was looking at Donnie Lottie. I remember it crossed my mind. I was leaving the studio one night about 11 o'clock. Tired, and I want to go home. He and Mac McAnally come through the door, right? You got to hear that song we just wrote. I said, man, I want to go home. And he says, no, you need to hear this. I said, all right. So I sit down on the gossip bench and they're in the lobby. They played me Old Flames.
oh,
And I said, oh, glad I stuck around, boy.
That's a true story.
That's a true story.
Verified, thank you.
Verified.
any accidental hits you can think of, songs that you didn't think were gonna make it when you cut it and then ended up being chart toppers?
I can't remember none of that. I do remember cutting records, great songs, and you just knew every, like, we when I was with Swampers, we cut, If Loving You Is Wrong, I Don't Want to Do Right. I knew it was a smash. Just had to be. Because the president of the label came down from Chicago, who was a mob guy. And he walks in, and we just finished cutting the album. 10 sides. We had to recut 9 sides, but he didn't recut If Loving You Is Wrong. Wow. It was a big record on Luther Ingram. Yeah, big record.
Is there anything you guys think I'm leaving out? Jump right in. I can sit in the control room all day, let me tell you, and I'm perfectly at home, putting me in front of a crowd, and I'm like, what do I do now?
Oh, you're doing great.
Oh, shoot. We was all having a good time.
Yeah.
There's a question.
Go ahead, Doc.
Here we go.
The first person I met when I moved here in 1976 in the music business was Larry Byram. With
Oh, yeah.
the club up at the
Right.
Tennessee line. And I went up there and he was so amazing player. I just had to go up and compliment him and talk to him. And he was very nice to me. He said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a songwriter." I said that after having written only 12 songs, but I just decided I was a songwriter. And I said, "I'm trying to meet some people in the publishing business." And I said, I'm new here. And he said, "You need to go talk to Clayton Ivey." And I said,
Glad you did.
I said, "Well, where is Clayton Ivey?" He said, he's a Wishbone. I said, "Where's Wishbone?" I was awful green. But anyway, he told me where it was by the airport. We didn't have Google Maps back then, so I was writing all this down. And I went over there to the studio and knocked on the door, and Clayton came to the door. And I introduced myself, and I told him what Larry Byram had told me, and he said, "Well, he's not a very credible person." So I went in there. This was back in the days of cassettes, and he said, "What do you got?" I said, "Well, I've got 6 songs on a cassette that I'd like to play for you." And I played them there. I was very intimidated because I knew who Clayton was and his stature and everything. So I played, the first song I played him was a song called Crazy Sue, remember that? And I played that, and he liked that, and I played him 2 or 3 more, and he liked it. And finally he said, "I like your songs, but they need keyboards on them." And, I said, "Well, I didn't know a keyboard player. These are guitar, a bass, and drums, and that's all I had on my demos." But anyway, he said, "Let me play them for my partner, and I'll get back to you." So usually that means you never hear from him. But 2 days later, Clayton called me, and he said, "Terry wants to meet with you." And we met, and they signed me to a deal, publishing deal, and I'll always be indebted to Mr.
I'm indebted to you, man.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What are some of
Well, I can't remember that. 'Cause
Well, oh, okay.
but I do know that when he and Matt got together, things clicked.
Force of nature, yeah.
Yeah, Mac and I went to Wishbone at the same time.
Okay.
And we started there together, and we didn't have a clue what we were doing. We didn't know anything about the music business. A lot of us back here didn't at the time. You know, we were just doing what we loved, and glad somebody wanted to listen to us.
Yeah.
And next thing we knew, we'd written Old Flame, and we said, "Well, that's a pretty good country song, I think." And Mac said, "Yeah, I think it is." We took it to Clayton, and like he said, he was leaving out the studio and ready to go because he'd been working all night. And we said, we blocked him from going out the door. "Please listen to this." And he did.
Yeah,
And,
man.
we cut a great demo of it, and Alabama recorded the demo pretty much verbatim.
Yeah, like the next day, wasn't it? Or 2 or 3 days after that?
A couple days later, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, I'm indebted
Thank
to
God.
Clayton.
Hey Clayton, I got a funny story about that song. I gotta share it.
Go ahead.
I actually-
Gary Baker, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, Gary.
I was on that demo that day, we got 5 songs.
Right.
And you only got 2 songs on that Alabama record, one you wrote by yourself. I think.
Woman back home.
That's right. But Bob, I was 22, from New York, not the city, but from New York. And I walk in there and we demo that, we played Old Thing. And I walk in there and all of a sudden Mac is playing just the drums, Roger, and just me alone. I'm freaking out. Why are you doing that? You know, I was so naive, and I had the cojones to tell Mac there's too many chords in this. Bob, I don't know how old you were when you first heard yourself back, and all of a sudden, wow, you got to play with that kick a little bit.
I was about 22 when I moved here.
Yeah, and that's funny, that was 27.
Long time.
Yeah, one time.
A lot of notes.
For sure. That was my first introduction to the Yankee bass player. I wasn't too sure.
Let me tell you something else. Every song I wrote, and they liked it, they gave me $100.
Hey, man, that's what partners are for.
You said Yankee bass player from Wisconsin. You had to clarify to Ray Charles, he asked about your ethnicity.
Right.
Right. That's probably the most told story that I've got. The biggest compliment I've ever had in my career. Probably won't be topped. I did a jam session with Ray Charles prior to anything because he came by to see Johnny Cash. And he walked out one night with Billy Sherrill encouraging him. And there was a skeleton band left. I was going to stay and meet Ray Charles. And he came out and sat down at the piano and counted off Why Me Lord, the Christopherson song. I had heard it, but that was as close as I'd ever gotten to playing it. I've been really gifted with a good ear, and it paid the biggest dividend that night. So Ray counts it off, John sings the lead, and I made it through it somehow, I don't know. And I've got a copy of it to this day on a CD, just a jam session. Well, Ray came in a few months later. Billy had been trying to get to produce Ray because Billy was A&R and Ray was on CBS Record. So he put together this Ray Charles and Friends album. And they got all these different artists and each one did a single with Ray. And I was played on Ray and Willie with Mickey Gilley, Ricky Skaggs, and I think George Jones. The Ray and Willie song was by 7 Spanish Angels, which I'll stand corrected, but I think it was the first country record to go #1 2 weeks in a row at that time. And so then we cut that, and that was a big success. And Ray came back and did another album, and it was more R&B stuff, more funk kind of slap stuff. And so we were into the second day of that session. And keep in mind, I'd worked with this guy for 2 days on Ray Charles and Friends. 2 days into this, and he got in the car and went to the hotel that night with Margie, who worked at CBS, and she came back the next day. She said, "You got to hear this." He got in the car that night and he said, "Margie, is that bass player black or white?" He didn't know. It wasn't a racial thing. He didn't know. And she said, "You know, that's a compliment." And I said, "Yeah." That was it. And I worked with him the next day. I was on pieces of 3 Olives with him. But that's basically, for me, the highlight of my career. When Ray Charles walked in the room, it was like, okay, this is a whole other ballgame. And then to sit there and jam with him, and him assuming I know the song, that was a little bit intimidating. But he was great to work with. Just a super guy. I got pictures of sitting at the keyboard with him. And 7 Spanish Angels was a big record.
Oh, yeah. There's something I've been meaning to ask you. We were talking about Larry Byram earlier. I had the privilege of coming out to Wishbone when John Kay was there.
Right.
Is Larry the reason that John Kay was there? Because Larry played with Steppenwolf.
Larry is the reason for John Kay.
That was a great
That was a
album.
great album. It really was.
Absolutely.
It really was.
Fighting home and
Give me some news I can use.
yeah.
God, that's great.
But talented. He played more than one instrument also.
Oh, Larry is a great musician. He's, matter of fact, he's one of my favorite guitar players.
Yeah.
He really is. Most melodic player I've ever heard.
Anyone else have any questions for these guys?
I do.
Okay.
Clayton, tell us about Little Richard and Muscle Shoals in 1970.
I can't. No, Richard, we could do an album on Richard, man. Travis, I tell you what. Travis, you want to do this?
Go ahead.
You went out on the road with him, Travis.
Enough said.
Anyway, I do know this. I do know that he had 35 wigs. And I just can't tell that other thing, man.
Who played piano on that record?
I did.
So Little Richard did not play.
No, really, Richard, I was the first piano player to play on his album. Other than me. And, he stands right there at the end of the piano too, right here. I got pictures. There's one over the mall. On the wall. I wish I could tell this other thing, but I can't.
Hey, the people wanna know, man.
They don't want to know this.
All right, Travis. Wow,
It must be bad.
yeah.
I don't know. It's no, I'm not gonna do it.
Is it worse than David Allen Coe standing in front of you naked?
No, that ain't nothing. No. No, we can't go
Now
there.
you gotta tell it.
No,
You're gonna let a guy that plays one note at a time top you with a story?
I don't care.
Hey, you don't sleep tonight.
I'll be getting something in the mail tomorrow.
Travis, you won't divulge it, huh?
Today, I'm just a fan and a spectator.
Well, anyway, it was fun coming to Richard. Everybody talks about who's the father of rock and roll. I gotta tell you, Richard is. And that's just a fact. Elvis is Elvis, but he's not the king of rock and roll. Or the queen. But Richard could do it, man. Like, I mean, even when he was 70 years old, he could go do 2 hours. There's no witness right there.
We never had a set list. You know, we play all everywhere.
Really?
No, but he knew anything he wanted to do, the band was there. I put his band together for him.
It's a good band, man.
Not some band, but he could sing country. He could do some slow things, sound like Otis Redding wishes. And Otis was great.
He was great. He was absolutely great.
Y'all have any questions? I mean, there's always people asking session questions, so.
Well, I wanted to know the funniest thing that you had ever seen in studio, but I think y'all
You
covered that
just, you just heard it.
during the session.
Oh, man. There was a couple of things. No, I can't do
Clayton, you're just a
it.
tease.
No, I'm not a damn tease either. No, I can't.
Bob, you
Go
can.
ahead, Bob, do another striptease.
Snake?
Talking about accidental hits or whatever people didn't think they were, or we didn't think, well, we all knew when we could, baby, don't get hooked on me on that day, but we knew it was a hit.
Oh, I know it was a hit.
Every one of us knew it was a hit, but next to none. I guarantee you, if that's a hit record, I'll buy it.
And you know what? Yeah, tell them that story.
Every one of you a Cadillac. We ain't seen a Cadillac yet. That was the #1 record.
That record took 2 days to cut. We cut it one day and Rick, I think, made the statement, it didn't have a hook line in it. And Mac rewrote it and we cut it the next day. So that was kind of, with Rick, it was not uncommon to spend 2 days on one song.
Oh, no.
And our problem is, as session players, we don't retain, we can do a 10 o'clock session, go to lunch, come back. I couldn't tell you what we cut at 10 o'clock in the head. We're not designed, because our brain is designed to create on the spot. We don't have, we walk into a session and that's the first time we hear the song. We have a chart and rehearse it and they turn the machine on. So you put all this energy into creating licks for this, because we have a basic chord chart with just a rough roadmap. And then once you get the track, it feels good, then you center your energy on the next song. So to get done after doing 2 sessions a day and cut 6 songs, I've tested myself. Can't remember the first one. I can remember probably 5 songs in my career, and they go all the way back to a smooth jazz album I did with a girl in Canada. I can hum 2 of her songs any day of the week, and one of them's in 5/4 time signature. Don't ask me why I can do it. Bobby Womack had me play one of the more difficult bass licks I've played on a song, and I can sit down and play that, and that was in, I think, the late 70s. But in a couple other songs, that's it. The rest of it, I can't remember. Yep.
A lot of these people in here may not realize, but as a songwriter, and a lot of songwriters in here, you don't know how much the session players contribute to our demos and what become trademark licks or riffs or whatever that turn the head of a lot of people. And it's because of the creativeness of these session players. And it's magic in the room when that happens, and y'all have all been there. And sometimes the muse doesn't show up, and the songs don't turn out that great. But on those moments when they do, that's what makes the song, and that's what a songwriter lives for, and gets those chill bumps is when those creative players in there, the level of creativity that comes out of those guys. Hey, try this. What about this? That's what makes the hits. And I've always been one to believe that those trademark licks and everything should warrant some royalty payments throughout, but they're usually a one-time. They're usually a one-time thing, a signature lick like that, because I mean, I love lyrics, but the melody is what people go away listening to and hearing and reminding them of the song. Then they get the lyrics a little bit later, maybe the second or third listen, and that's been my thing through the years. What gives me the chill bump is the feel and the sound and everything put together. And then you start listening to what the lyrics really say, and then you appreciate it even more.
Well, I always say that, they got the Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville, right?
Yeah.
But around the block is the Musicians Hall of Fame. Without those musicians around here, there wouldn't be no Country Music Hall of Fame.
Right.
That's true.
It just wouldn't happen.
Exactly
It
right.
wouldn't happen.
That's kind of what I was touching on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're right.
I think Donnie owes you a cut of old place.
Yes, he does. I don't want that pocket stuff, man. You know what?
I think you had a cut, didn't you?
Huh?
You had a cut, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
To follow up on that, is there anything that you guys have been part of that you felt like was that significant of a part of the song that you didn't get credit for?
No.
I think back to what Donnie was saying, and I said earlier, it's all the chemistry. You put a band together, and it's communicating with, because we don't have, there's various types of session players. There's guys that do nothing but movie scores that can sight read sheets that wide. There's guys that rehearse like bands. Then there's the session players like here in Nashville. It is all spontaneous. We have no clue when we go in. A lot of times when I book sessions, I didn't even know who I was working with until I got there. So you get in and Donnie brings a song in, Gary brings a song in, they play it. That's our first exposure to that song. They describe kind of what feel if they're going country or R&B or whatever, and then it's up to the players to come up with a lick. So, or some kind of an arrangement. So have you ever? We've both played stuff, but I think it's the glue that just making that track feel good, making it presentable to an artist or producer, pitching it. The only downside is if you hear your licks that you played on a demo on a record that somebody else copied. That's a little bit hard because there's no credit there for us, where then you become a demo player. I played the long bass slide on a demo of a song called Lost in the 50s with Ronnie Millsap. And it's like the intro that is that long. That got me into Ronnie Millsap's account. I'd been trying to get his account for a long time. And he heard that demo and he said, I want that band. And that long slide was, they left it. I duplicated that when we cut that record.
I'll tell you a funny story about Ronnie. We were booked for 4 dates, 4 doubles, all 4 days, 4 sessions a day, that day. Because it was him, it was Ronnie Millsap and Kenny Rogers doing it. The name of the song was She's Mine. It won a Grammy. And we cut that song in the first hour, and they had to pay us for the other 3.5. And everybody was double scale.
That's a great story.
That cost, of course, they made it back. But,
We both made
and
more
boy,
money.
hey, whatever you do in life, don't work for no artist that's got 4 producers. There was 4 producers there that day.
Wow.
4. I said, man, never again will I do this. It hadn't.
You can't please everybody.
No, I mean, no, you can't please those 4. No. Because see, all 4 of those could hit records. You know what I'm saying? So they knew what they were talking about. Except they were all going 4 different directions. And I'd sit down and I'd play this part, okay, I'll play that part. And Kenny would say, well, go back and play that other part you played 30 minutes ago. I said, well, how the hell am I supposed to remember that? You know, so, but that's what you go through. It's just like Bob said, it's what we choose to do.
Well, I think there was magic in that rhythm section at Wishbone.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
That was a great rhythm section.
You had fun, didn't you?
Yeah, and it just, everybody was, the chemistry, we're back to that word. Everybody's head was in the same place, because we would cut tracks. And we do Lorna Luft and Sally Kellerman and
Crazy.
all these acts. And then when everybody went home, we'd stay open until 3 o'clock in the morning and do what we felt like we wanted to play off the top of our head.
Yeah.
And that's what made that band, I think, good, because we would jump from doing like real straight ahead pop things or whatever, and then go in there and blow it out and get an arrangement and play jazz funk and stuff like that, just to air out our heads. And that band was great at doing that.
From the Reed brothers to John Kane's Tenor Wolf.
Yep.
Yeah.
And even Orbison's last solo album with that Laminar Flow was cut there. But yeah, and I mean, we would do all that stuff, plus Family Tradition, and then all the John R. stuff, when he brought all those people down from Nashville, more R&B stuff. So that was an extremely versatile, in my opinion, band. There wasn't much that walked through the doors that we weren't capable of interpreting, you know.
Right. That takes talent. That takes magic.
Yeah, and we worked together. Roger and I played together for so long, you know, and we just kind of that's the way it was.
We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, we did, so.
Roger was a funny guy. God.
Do you have any stories of him you could tell that you could
No.
get away with? Don't even think about the fact that his wife's sitting here.
No. I'm not telling none of this stuff.
We have to get
You're
him.
no fun.
Yeah, right. I was little with myself.
I know he would get excited when he would answer the phone and somebody like Clayton or Bob was on the phone. Hey, baby.
Yeah.
Everybody was a baby.
And this is about Raj. We'd be over Wishbone cutting. We cut the track. As soon as the last downbeat went down, the drum booth door was
I got mine.
And Roger would run out and say, I got mine. Many times.
It's true. I remember when wait a minute, hold on 1 second, Travis. I remember when we played this club gig down in Corinth, Mississippi, and it was so cold. And John Willis's car didn't have a heater. So me and Roger found.
And then I built a 4-string Fender. Just modified it. So I used the 2 of those. I've had a lot of guitars. I don't have a lot of guitars. People would think I'd have 100 of them. I've only got about 5, but they all work. They're all good.
You had a question?
It's more of a queer thing. It's 2023 now. What's the most significant thing you're going to see that will take session players into the next century? I mean, it's a lot different than it was, and I love the stories and reminiscing, but the last 15, 20, 30 years have been quite different technology-wise, music-wise. Is there anything significant you see that's going to really keep the flame alive of the organic of Nashville and Shoals? Because you don't use MIDI here, which I really
Well, what you gotta do is you gotta get some young guys who start to learn how to do this. I mean,
the real way,
I'm sorry.
not computers, but like
The real way.
organic.
Yeah, yeah. You just gotta learn how to play music with each other, rather than, it's just like a friend, Larry Carlton told me one time, he says, man, when you come in to do a session, you gotta leave your ego at that door, because you're gonna get it stepped on in here. And it's true, because I've had his daddy step all over me.
Me too.
But that's what you gotta learn how to do, man. But I don't see many young guys wanting to do it. Of course, there's not a lot of stations like there used to be either. But if a big act come to town with a big name producer, he's not gonna hire them. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't know how to do it. And I gotta tell you, in Nashville, Jack, at 10 o'clock, when they count it off at 10 o'clock, you better be ready. Because there's 1,000 people lined up out here wanting your job, right outside that studio. And all you gotta do is mess up just a little bit.
Right.
I don't think there's a platform for players coming up, younger people, from what I've seen in teaching, and everybody's YouTubers. I used to have a lot of students that were really like sponges. They absorbed. They were fascinated. They wanted to hear stories. But that was 1 out of 100, you know. Then it just tapered off with the young students. I wasn't getting any. But there's not any publishing companies here to speak of that have demo sessions. That's kind of how you stair step out of a live gig into demos, and then hopefully people hear you on demos and they hire you on masters. That's how it was in Nashville. Right now, the music that's out there available, every time I hear somebody go by the house in a boat or a car with this loud bass speakers, and there's nothing. You can't learn from today's music. There's nothing out there to learn from, and I see it in a lot of the players that come in, and they know a few hot things, you know, and then that's it, and they think they really have got a handle on all of it. And you put them in a recording studio, 5 minutes with one of his charts, you better be prepared, because they're extremely detailed, they're complex, but it's required. And so people that come in that don't have any sense of feel, they start chirping, and they're all, I get on some of these bass blogs. Some of the opinions of these people are influenced by somebody else that has made this statement. So they're all, this is what we do, you know, and they've got massive pedal boards and things like that for a country date. But it's what looks good. I went through that phase where you had to have big road cases and equipment for sessions because it impressed people. But the bottom line is there's not a foundation for people of good quality music to learn from. And they don't seem to be interested in learning. They're just following. It's kind of like fads, you know, when we were kids, you know, somebody started wearing this, that's what you did. But I just don't see any music that people nobody's into jazz, nobody's into funk. don't remember the last time when Mick Hayes was a R&B act we did here 5 years ago, but it's really disappointing because I don't know what's going to take over as session players. Clayton and I have, I suppose, in a sense, have aged out, but we still could play and we still have a lot of fun playing sessions. But you get in with some people that are not experienced, it can bog the whole session down. And one would be if he slapped one of his charts in front of somebody that has been doing all these sessions of one type of music, and now we've branched out into versatility. Well, we haven't learned that word yet in our manual, you know, and they can't piece it together. So I have a lot of problems trying to figure out what people are going for and where they're going to end up musically. Because in this area, to me, it's very disappointing to have the venues. You can't get a jazz gig around here and people even accept it. Sunday night over at Southland, you couldn't find a parking place at 5 o'clock. It was this massive crowd and excellent jazz bands. Denise Times, I stayed most of the night. It was amazing. It was like all the people that have been starving for jazz, with the foundation of the Handy Fest started out, blues and jazz, packed that place. And I think the jazz ends tonight or it ended last night. It's really sad that we have taken this. You go to the Marriott, you go to Swampers, the people you heard over there last week, you're going to hear them there this week for Music Fest. Why can't we get, 25 years ago, the Handy Fest here was really good. You had people packing out places and quality venues. Eric Essex, you couldn't get into Red Lobster if you went there 4 o'clock. You weren't going to get a table. And all the jazz people that came in here, and people came to this town to be entertained. Now I've heard so many people in the last 4 or 5 days, it's like, where are the jazz lunches? Who's playing here? And you've got music that is available here 7 days a week, 365. We can't get back to having jazz or 1 week. We get 1 week of good quality music. So therefore, to answer part of your question, there aren't people coming in here that are attracted to jazz because there's no foundation. You know, not that jazz is the answer, but there's very few even hot R&B bands around here, you know. So I don't know, it's kind of disappointing. It used to be, when this place first went wet, we had big venues, big places to play, and good bands. You know, even if you had a really good band, you could lock a house gig up, but they were good. People went out and saw them, you know. And now it's like these little venues and nothing to do.
And Willie Ruff lives here. This is his home now, and most people couldn't tell me who he is. He's a legend when it comes to jazz.
Absolutely.
I want to say something about players.
Go.
Y'all that are players, and anybody else in here, Donnie, all of us that have studios and all our lives been in the music business, all of our lives. You know, there are young guys that come up, and they're greater, there's players better than you, better than all of us, that can't cut it in the studio sometimes. You know, there's more to it than being a great player.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So maybe you could touch on that a little bit. Now, I was going to ask you to tell one of the worst things that ever happened to you in the studio, but then Rodney's here.
I was just thinking you're here.
Mary, you had a question.
But am I right about the players, right? I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen great, I've had friends come in and say, man, I can do this way better than Kenny Bell or whoever. Just strum it. They can't.
No, they can't.
They get in there and just keep it out.
Everybody thinks it's easy,
Yeah.
but we're having fun.
Yeah.
Mary.
I do photograph for a lot of events in the area, and there's one event that they have a younger group, and it just seems like they want to play as loud as they can, bounce around, and I first saw them 2 years ago, saw them again this year, exact same thing. I mean, and they're just got the speakers turned up as loud as possible, and it doesn't seem like
Music.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like music or yeah, it's just volume.
They're not true players. I mean, they're not advancing, they don't have any idea, they just think they're going out and making a lot of loud music.
Yeah.
And they want a career in the music business, and you can't, I'd hate to decide right now that I was gonna be a session player and make a living at it.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
It's just,
It's impossible. So how long are you gonna play in these clubs and nobody pays any money around here?
yeah.
That's the other thing. We're getting paid nightly gigs around here is 1990s, 80s and 90s. It's pathetic. But yet, and nobody will pay a cover charge? I don't know. It's just not a place for players to learn,
To grow.
or to grow, yeah.
What can we do to change it?
Well, get them interested in music again. They're like I said earlier, there's not any music out there now that I hear that you can learn from. Country is formulated. I mean, they stick with that. That's their deal. But as far as the history of Muscle Shoals and what made this place, just simple R&B records, I don't hear it, or I haven't seen it. I don't know what it's going to take to motivate people, but everybody seems to be locked into just, yeah, we're content with this, and this is where everybody's going tonight. They go out and that's it, and they play music loud in their car, and it's like nothing to learn.
Yeah, and you can drive downtown during the Handy Festival and hear the exact same loud
Yeah.
racket.
Yeah.
Now, Travis, over at the Shoals Theater, you're gonna be with Charlie Musselwhite and Jerry Phillips.
Yes,
Is that Friday?
yes. Charlie Musselwhite, one great blues harmonica player. He's won 18 WC Handy Awards. So he's
There's just some true handy music you can listen to. Well, suffice to say, they made them, and I played them.
Good one.
48 years in radio. I may grow up and get a real job one day.
No, you feel like us, you wouldn't know what to do.
Oh, I love this man. He said I didn't look that old. I started when I was 10.
May I make a comment, please?
Yes.
We're from North Carolina, so we grew up on beach music, Carolina beach music. And this music is part of us. Clarence Carter, Etta James, Andy State, Paul, and we just thank y'all so much. We can't ever thank you enough what you mean to us. We have studied, the first time we came, we went home and studied for a month. That's all we did. We just researched. And we're just so happy to be here, and we thank every session player that's here. Thank y'all so much.
People like that couple are why musicians do what they do.
Yep. It's true.
James, anything else before we wrap up?
I was just gonna say, one, thank y'all for being here.
Absolutely.
It's a real honor to have you. Appreciate y'all coming. August the 9th, we're gonna have Willie Ruff here, so you
Great.
mentioned.
All right, we should talk about that.
11:30 or 12 or so, so
I'll be here.
appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.